To all my moms moving on, I have something amazing for you. If you're ready to move on from your engagement ring, the experts at Worthy can help you turn it into cash, fast and risk-free. Worthy does all the work, and their competitive auctions get you the best deal possible. Over 45,000 people have already moved on with Worthy. Are you ready to move on too? Visit worthy.com/moms to get an extra $100 when your jewelry sells for over $1,500. That's worthy.com/moms for a special bonus offer just for the Moms Moving On community.
A month after I finished treatment, I found out that my husband had been cheating on me while I was going through treatment. We were married for 20 years.
Going through cancer treatment, you were going through the ins and outs of this every day, and your husband was cheating on you.
Yes.
Welcome back to another episode of Moms Moving On. We have another real mama joining us today. Sorry, starting over. Kevin, delete that. Welcome back to another episode of Moms Moving On. We have another real mama joining us today for a real story that you need to hear. Jenny Swinerton is a mom just like me and you. She's been divorced. She's an attorney. But there's something about her story that stopped me in my tracks, and I'm so grateful she's here sharing it with us today. Jenny, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think there are, I don't know, hundreds of podcast requests I get, and I had seen your name pop up in my inbox, and I said to my assistant, like, we have to talk to her because just what we got from the email, I mean, wow, so many people are going to be able to draw on your strength. But I'll let you introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Well, thank you so much. Like you said, I'm an attorney. I have two children. They are 13 and 15, a boy and girl. I've been divorced about a year and a half, separated just around 2 years. And yes, I have quite the story, which, you know, is good and bad, right? So it's been a journey and a challenge, but I really do feel like I'm coming onto the other side of it.
Well, just the fact that you can appreciate the good and the bad means, you know, you definitely are in a better place from where you were. So tell us, like, take us back to when it was bad, right? And then we'll get to the good.
Okay. So in September of 2020, I was diagnosed with invasive breast cancer. Very, you know, obviously unexpected as it is for anyone. Just had my annual mammogram, which, you know, would be also a plug for this is please, ladies, you know, get your mammograms. And so I was a little delayed because of COVID, which so many people, you know, found that challenge. So in November of 2020, I had a double mastectomy.
Wow.
And the cancer had spread to my lymph nodes. So that meant chemo and radiation. So recovered, you know, pretty well from the surgery in January of 21, started a couple months of chemo, then a reconstruction surgery. And then in June of 21, I did 5 weeks of radiation. And
wow.
That completed my treatment plan. And, you know, I'm cancer-free. I'm doing great.
Amazing.
But, you know, it was a challenge and a journey in and of itself. And a month after I finished treatment, I found out that my husband had been cheating on me while I was going through treatment. We were married for 20 years.
Going through cancer treatment, you were going through the ins and outs of this every day, and your husband was cheating on you.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm so sorry.
I found out 2 days after my 20-year anniversary. I mean, so it's like I say these things and sometimes I can't even still believe them myself. It's just, it's about as challenged and dirty as it can get.
So how did you find out, first of all? And, you know, was this something that started before you were diagnosed, or was just something that happened in the interim?
It would have started around the time of, I think, that I was starting chemo. So he actually met her at my daughter's gymnastics gym.
Mm.
So because I was going through chemo and treatment, I couldn't take her to this, dirty gym with germs. And so she had started that gym around that time, so that was when they met. And so it would have started, right around that time.
How did you find out?
Emails on his iPad.
Oh no. Oh
Yeah. Talk
God. Why
about
are they so like, no
so
offense to your
stupid.
baby daddy, but like, like just stupid. Like cover your
So
tracks or
stupid.
something.
So stupid. And I mean, and obviously you have, I'm sure, a lot of listeners who have, discovered the same information. And I cannot describe to you what that moment was like. Pressing, email button on the iPad and just seeing your life flash in front of you. I mean, he had rented an apartment. He was moving out. He had put a deposit on an apartment, 2 months before. They had picked out furniture together. I saw emails between the two of them, hotel receipts. I mean, the
Jenny. And
whole
all the
thing.
while you're thinking, I just went through the fight of my life.
Yep.
I just beat cancer and now I have to deal with this.
Yeah. And I mean, part of my process too is I need to be real and honest about our marriage. And I have to be
Yes.
real and honest about, I knew during that time he was not, happy. And it was difficult because I was sort of focused on my treatment, but I knew he was not happy. And, we were working through some things and, having some conversations about our marriage, nothing at all to the extent of even, separating or anything like that. It was just like, okay, this is a time now in our lives to reset, right? I
Hmm.
mean, we just went through this journey, and now what does the other side look like? And have no idea, obviously, during that time that this was going on. Um, so, I mean, I've never had a panic attack in my life. And I mean, that instant, I cannot even describe it. I was scrolling through this iPad and my hands were curling. Like I couldn't even sort of function my hands because it's just so traumatic. It is so traumatic. And thank God, which is also one of the things, that I would share is, build a tribe around you, because
Hmm.
within 10 minutes, one of my best friends was here. My kids were home. It was an afternoon. They were home. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't speak. I couldn't talk. I was hyperventilating. She immediately helped me formulate a plan, got my kids out of the house, so I could talk to him when he got home from work. And just, I couldn't have made it through that moment without her.
Gotta be grateful for the village, right? You never realize how
Yes.
much you need them until you're in situations like that. So,
No.
now you've gone through one of the hardest things in your life and you're faced with this. And I'm sure the anger and the pain was just insurmountable. How did you navigate forward from that point? I meet with so many women every day, and rightfully so, people get very stuck and rooted in this anger
Right.
and they feel like that part's never going to pass.
Right.
And obviously it does, but it takes work.
It does. And I can't say it was obviously instantaneous or even isn't still a little there. But it's better. And I have done the work. I have done, being an attorney, I'm sort of a problem solver. And
Hmm.
so I dove into this as one of my problems I needed to solve. So I was sort of just voraciously, getting my hands on everything I could. Got a therapist for myself, got a therapist for the kids. I've listened to every podcast I could get my hands on, read every book. Just it's, there was no other option for me. I was going to get through this and I was going to come out of it on the other side because there's no option. I
Right.
mean, there is no
There
option. If
is,
I
but
want
the
to
other
have a
one
good
is not.
life,
Right. There's an option, but it's not a
right?
nice one. Right. There's
And
that
I
victim and
can't,
victor mentality that I love so much. And I think that's what really shines through with you. It's like you just took your lemons and you really squeezed the hell out of them. And I'd love to hear, what came out of this for you on the other side.
Well, I think that having done all the work, and I can't say that, there still aren't challenging days. I'm still, mourning the loss of what I thought my life was going to be, right? And I'm mourning the loss of what I thought my kid's life was going to be. It was certainly a very unexpected trauma. And, we met when we were 20, college sweethearts. We were together for 25 years, my whole entire adult life. It's how do you unravel that? And so I think it's just, now that I'm almost 2 years into it, it's a process. The first 5 or 6 months was just that unraveling process. I remember having moments where, even though he had moved out and I knew he was still with the affair partner, something would happen and I would call him. And, then I became sort of aware of that and I had to
Yes.
break
That,
myself of that,
oh,
right?
breaking that marital cycle of
Yes,
just instinct, right? Like,
right,
oh, this happened and he would appreciate this joke. And then you have to stop
right,
yourself. Like, why is it that we're looking for validation, or is it just like a knee-jerk response that you've been conditioned because you've been with this person your whole adult
right.
life? I know that can be such a hard part of the process.
I mean, he was my person for 25 years. And when you share children together, of course, something happens with them. Well, the person that's going to care the most about it is the person who just caused you the worst pain you'll probably ever experience in your life.
Yeah.
It's so confusing. I mean, my therapist really was a godsend. She's this like 65-year-old, hippie who drops F bombs during my sessions. And I just absolutely love her because I can appreciate that so much. And, she really helped me walk through that process of, he is not your person anymore. He
Mhm.
does not, care for you the way that he maybe originally did or did even, halfway through your marriage. It's just, he's not that person. You have to figure out how to co-parent with him. And that's a different and new relationship. And so it's, I think, just being aware of that
Yes.
because, if you're not, you just walk through and then you're angry and he's not saying what you want him to say. He's never going to say what you want him to say ever
I
again.
I
Right.
love this therapist. I feel like we need to interview her too, because that's the truth.
She's
The
great.
relationship dynamic has changed and we have to adapt or just become a victim of the pain of it changing, right? And how do you co-parent with somebody? How do you put your pain aside? And it's one of the hardest things to do. And it's the method that, we use in coaching our
Right.
clients is separating the pain from having to do everything else, otherwise it muddies the water. So how did you do that for yourself? Because my next question was about how do you co-parent with this person?
Right. Well, after I kind of went through that initial process of the breakup, if you will, I set a boundary for myself, which was we primarily only communicate via email. And of course, there have been times where there's a last minute scheduling issue or something happens with one of the kids. And, we certainly will pick up the phone and talk then. But the bulk of the communication is via email. And, I've really sort of struggled with that. And
Mm.
that is that the best for my children. They don't really see mom and dad engaging anymore, when he drops them
Yet,
off.
yet, I like to
Okay.
always add that yet, right? Because time is
Right.
a funny thing.
Right. But I feel as if just seeing us interact is not necessarily all of the sudden this healthy thing for them
Right.
to see either, because it would be challenging and painful. And again, just like everything, it's gotten easier when I see him at my daughter's lacrosse game, or we sit obviously at other opposite ends of the stands, and that's a whole process that you have to go through. I went instantly from having this person that sat beside me at every one of the kids' games to this person that I'm strategically, figuring out where he's sitting so I can sit over here. I mean,
It's
it
one of the realest
unbelievable.
struggles. Yeah. I mean, I think every single person I've worked with is like, there's either the person who wants to block the other parent from coming to the games on
Right.
their days because the pain is
Right.
too
Would never do
intense,
that. Yeah.
or the what, it's hard, but that's what I'm talking about, putting the
Right.
emotions to the side, right? But you don't know what the right thing is because you don't want your kids to see you tense with the other parent or upset in their presence, but you also want your kids to have the experience of having both parents there. It's such a conundrum, but
It
clearly
is.
you're finding your way through it. How did your kids handle all of this? What was their understanding? Because a lot of
Mhm.
moms, there's a lot of questions around, am I honest with my kids? Do I
Right.
tell them what went down? And I would love to know how you handled that if you don't mind sharing.
Oh my gosh. Another aspect of my story that is just, you know, challenging. So it would have not been my intention for them to ever know the true story. We sat them down when, after I found out, after processing for a week or two, we sat them down and told them that dad was moving out, that he had some things to work on, and that, we didn't know um, exactly where this was headed. But, I felt like I wanted to sort of ease them into it, even though I knew where it was headed. And I really had no intention of ever telling them the full story.
Hmm.
And even since then, I've, never badmouthed dad to them. That is, not something that I know would be healthy. And it's not worth it. Um, but unfortunately, because this was so intertwined and complicated, a mom from the gym, she lives 2 miles down the road. She goes to my church. She has the exact same age children. We live in a decent sized suburb, but, it feels very small at
Yeah,
times.
especially in these
And
times.
yes. And, again, I was being strategic. I only told, a few family members and one or two friends because I didn't want that piece of it to get out into the community. But unfortunately, they made some decisions that, they were pretty bold and open about their relationship in front of her children, even before, we were separated.
Was
So her
she
children
already
knew.
divorced?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I missed that part.
And
Okay.
her marriage had ended due to infidelity of her husband, which I find just
Ah,
unbelievably baffling, right?
right.
Um, if I ever went on a date and sat at, a dinner table with a man who had cheated, that is not something I could have done.
Right.
I know people
It's,
change and I know they make mistakes, but
hey, we're not here
couldn't
to
do it.
judge, but we're human,
I
right?
know.
Okay. All right. Well,
Couldn't
listen,
do
I
it.
mean, there's a lid
So
for every pot or something like that, I guess.
I guess, and maybe they're soulmates. I don't know.
So I have to ask. So now, he's left you for this person and it's a small town and now everybody's kind of talking and this and that. Are your kids spending time with her at this point or like how did that all work out?
No, not at the beginning. And this is, a bit of advice I would definitely say to your listeners. It is the absolute best thing I did during the divorce process. I asked him and required him essentially to put a clause in our shared parenting agreement that he was not allowed to bring his affair partner around the children for 1 year from the date of the divorce being final. And my gosh, in hindsight, I couldn't have imagined myself how I would have been able to deal with that immediate separation, that immediate knowledge, and then knowing that my children were going to be interacting with her. And it just gave us all a minute to heal. It gave them
Unbelievable.
time. And now she is, around and they have been introduced, but they are in such a different spot than they
Hmm.
were a year and a half ago and can handle that a lot better. I can handle it a lot better. And my gosh, that was absolutely the best thing I did.
I'm really glad you did that for all of you involved because sometimes putting that pause, um, it can things de-escalate over time
Right.
and again putting the children first. And for those of you listening, I know a lot of people do want to add to their parenting plans that their their exes or exes to be won't introduce a partner until the other parent knows about it. There are different situations, so I don't want you to listen to this and think this has to happen for you too. This was
Sure.
a unique situation. Sometimes it's a perfect idea, sometimes it's not, and you remember what you put in your parenting plan you also have to follow. So just sharing that because there were things I wanted in my parenting plan that now I have to follow. And I'm like, oh boy, okay. Well, anyway, on that note, I'm glad what you did worked for you. And more than that, I'm glad that he was amenable to that idea and in that sense chose to put the kids first. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. And so, with the help of the kids' therapist, which she was integral in all of this, I immediately talked to her and I said, I'm really afraid that they're going to find out and they're going to
Hmm.
hear it from some kid
Right.
at a football game.
Right. And
Right.
they should hear it from you first if they have to hear it.
Right. And so she advised that we tell them and that it would be better coming from us. And she walked us through how to do it and sort of, tips on what to say. She said, don't do it in the home so that they always associate that with learning that information. So we took them to a park. He and I had sort of rehearsed what he was going to say. He did the talking. And it was awful. It was awful.
Yeah. I
But
love that advice of not telling them in the place that they associate with safety. That's something I
right.
share all the time because I for myself as a kid, I mean, I that same message had to be delivered to me and I can tell you where I
Mm,
was sitting, what I was
right.
wearing, what the weather was like. Like it just was it's a core memory that never goes away and I love that advice and I love how you handled it. I have to say relying on the help of professionals
Right.
to make the best choices in this difficult situation is, I mean, it's just amazing. You really took the high road and did the right things here in all areas despite how hard it was for you, and that's just it's amazing.
And I can't say, every time I took the high road, I will say I've always taken the high road when it comes to the kids. I mean, there have certainly been things that I have said to him and, just in the moment that was just driven by my anger and my hurt and my trauma. But when it came to the kids, I mean, they were my sole focus. This was hard enough on them to begin with. And then, a few months in, we had to add this additional layer of information that they had to process about their dad. And, they really do have a great relationship with him.
Oh, I'm glad I was going to
He's a
ask
good
because,
dad. He
yeah.
is.
And it's, you know what, it if nothing else, if if you can give them this hard truth and then also support their relationship with their father, it shows them, it teaches them kind of this, not that what he did was okay by any means, because it
Right.
wasn't, but we're human, we're flawed, we make these mistakes. We should not be judged based on our mistakes. There is a difference between
Right.
making a big mistake and being a good parent, right? And so that's that's the road, I guess, that I would have taken. Not, not that it matters in your case, but it just makes the most sense for the kids so that 10 years from
Right.
now, when they're telling the story of their childhoods, they can say, my mom really went through it, but man, did she handle it well? Because the alternative would be so hard on them.
Well, and now in hindsight, I really did struggle with the decision in the moment because of course you want to protect them. And I didn't want them to have a severed, relationship with him. But in hindsight, it really was the best because it also gives them some perspective, even though it's really hard for a 13 and 15-year-old to have perspective. I think they will process this later as adults and have a different perspective. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that it also gave them a little bit of insight into why our relationship now is the way it is,
Mm-hmm.
that they don't really see mom and dad, engaging. But they know that we communicate on the regular. And, I try to keep it light with them. I'll say, oh, yeah, dad mentioned that, when really I'm referring to the, Monday email we had sent each other. And so,
Right.
try not to
But
be too specific.
that's good. Giving the idea that you're still on the same team, even if you're
Right.
not still under the same roof, is so important because it also teaches these kids like you're not going to pull one over on me.
Exactly.
Dad and I still, have
Right.
adult conversations. So, but curious, we've
Absolutely.
learned about these circumstances that you found yourself in, how you pulled yourself out of it, how you helped your kids, how you co-parent. But what about Jenny's life now? What's it like for you outside of all of that?
I am doing things that I never would have done, right? If I was married, or if I was still married. And I don't say that in a negative way, but I am lucky because I have a wonderful tribe of women in my life and friends. And that would be my biggest advice is even if it's a tribe of one, find your tribe. And I also have five sisters. So I
Oh,
have a
wow.
big old family. Yeah.
Amazing.
So two of them, were here within an hour of that day that I found out and have just, been through the ringer with me. So I'm fortunate that I already had this tribe. But even since then, I was just thinking about it last night. I was at my tennis league, which is something I started last year after I got divorced.
Always
I
got
was
to
like,
find that thing. Yep.
right?
Love that. Love that for you.
I always wanted to take tennis lessons and he never did. And so it was one of the first things I did after we separated. And it's amazing because it must be the thing you do when you get divorced because probably half of our league is divorced and some of them have become such good friends of mine.
I love that you're saying this because I preach this on the regular and it was in my
Yeah.
book, about finding that one thing. Very often for women, it's the thing they felt restricted from in their marriage or that their husband didn't approve of or didn't think
Right.
they should take the time for. And I love that you did that. For some people, it could be painting. For others, it could
Right.
be tennis. For me, it was the gym. It's different for everyone, but it's so important because you grow a whole new part of yourself. And if you're lucky, find people in the same situation as you.
Right. And they've really been such an inspiration in the sense that everybody has their own story and you learn that too you know um, they each have a dynamic to their story where you look at them and you're like oh gosh that's awful and they just teach me things and they give me things that I don't get from my friends that are still married. And I mean I get a lot of amazing things from my married friends, but there's just a connection there
Yeah,
that you have, right?
of course. Nobody can understand
Right,
divorce and co-parenting like someone who's been through it. And you can, it's almost unfair to expect your married
right,
friends, and I'm saying that because I feel like I would find myself disappointed when before any of my friends were divorced, it just like there wasn't empathy towards my
right,
situation or the fact that I didn't have my daughter that weekend. But then I realized I was expecting too much and asking too much of people who had no idea what it was like to be in
right,
those shoes. And I know everyone listening can relate, but again, finding something that fills you up is ultimately going to need lead to things like people that align with you,
right,
just rediscovering a passion, and it's so important because as my friend Susan Guthrie says, divorce is not a death, it's an opportunity. And you
right.
certainly have made it that.
Well, and you have to adjust to this new normal, as a mom of two kids, as a married person for 20 years, you really don't have a lot of alone time. And
No,
then all of the sudden, right, in this instant, you have a whole weekend to yourself.
right.
And that
Yeah.
is challenging at the beginning.
Challenge. It's been 6.5 years for me, girlfriend. I'm waiting for it to get easier. No, I'm just kidding. Um, it is super challenging and it's there's a learning curve that you feel like, why do I have to learn this? I didn't even want this. And it's what we call
Right.
the fuckery of co-parenting. But I'm sure
Yeah,
for
it's
you,
bullshit.
I have a feeling that your perspective on life, you have this elevated sense of gratitude because of your illness and
Absolutely.
coming out on the other side and being healthy. So I have no doubt that that helps you through the hardest parts.
And I am lucky because I have always had that approach. And even when I was going through, my cancer treatment, I would always say to everyone, this is just a blip on the radar. This is just a blip on the radar. I'm going to get through this and, move on with my life. And, I guess the same is true with the challenge that came right after that. And, that's another thing that I would go back to when you asked me, how have I gotten through this? One of the things I also had to work through was, being a cancer survivor. I
Mm-hmm.
really didn't even get to process having gone through that journey
Mm-hmm.
because I was immediately smacked in the face with the next challenge. And so I've been very conscious about that too. Another thing my therapist has worked with me on, and she talked to me a lot about, you have to get rid of the anger and resentment. It feeds in your body like a cancer, and you cannot keep that. You have got to release it, and it's only going to make you sick if you don't.
I mean, no truer words. Again, this therapist sounds like a
She's
godsend. I
amazing.
think everything, all of the people that you've got lined up for you in your journey, it's just there are no mistakes, right? Like there are no coincidences. The people you end up with in your life are the people you really need. And I feel like that's a perfect place to end. The anger and resentment that you let fester inside of you will result in your feeling terrible and God forbid illness. And it's a choice. Be
It's
a
a choice.
victor. Be a victor, like Jenny, everybody. Jenny, any last words for someone listening who may be experiencing the pain of infidelity right now?
Well, I have this sign that is sitting next to me that I bought probably within a month of finding out, and it's sort of been my mantra. So I always tell everyone that I've met since then going through this, just listen to, I'll buy you this sign and, listen to these words. And it says, today is not the day to be a weak ass bitch. And
Today is
that
not
has
the
been
day.
my story.
Probably not
Today is not
tomorrow
the
either.
day. Right. So just, sometimes you have to look at that sign and just remind yourself that. So
I love this, and I'm so inspired by you and your attitude.
thank you
And
so much.
your kids are very lucky to have you. I just got to say that.
Thank you.
And wow, for anybody listening, if you want to get in touch with Jenny for like some inspo, if you are dealing with cancer or
Absolutely.
infidelity or both, I mean, I'd love for people to be able to find you and connect with you. So where can they do that?
So I'll give you my email, which is my full name, Jenny Swinerton at gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook under now my maiden name, which is Maag, Maag. So Jen Maag on Instagram and Facebook. And I would absolutely love that.
We will tag all of it. Thank you so much. And for those of you
Thank
listening,
you.
thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on Moms Moving On.